The top story on ABC News Breakfast this morning, thousands of Qantas passengers are facing another frustrating day. In about half an hour's time, ground staff will walk off the job for an hour. Engineers in Melbourne will strike for an hour from 6 o'clock tonight.
Up to 40 flights are likely to be delayed or cancelled. The industrial action coincides with one of the country's biggest weekends for interstate travel.
Now, Qantas spokesperson Olivia Wirth joins us now from Sydney. Olivia Wirth, Qantas has faced strike action now from baggage handlers and engineers, as well as industrial action from pilots. And doesn't this suggest that this isn't simply about, a rogue union here and there? This is about a problem that's really with you.
Absolutely not. I mean, Qantas is very much committed to these negotiations. As you've said, we do have negotiations on our enterprise bargaining agreements open with three particular unions. That includes the engineering union and the pilot union. We've been in negotiations with them for 12 months. We also are in negotiations with the transport workers union, and that has been taking place since May. We've had over 100 meetings with the pilots and engineers union, and we're very much committed to these ongoing negotiations about pay and wages. We unfortunately have a number of claims in their log of claims which we simply can't agree to. These claims would mandate outdated work practices. There also are significant claims on the table for pay rises and salary increases which simply are not sustainable in this current economic climate.
Well, let's unpack some of those things that you just said. We spoke to the Transport Workers Union earlier today, and they said they haven't even got a response, so that it's not actually about what's in the document and whether or not it's unreasonable. And you refer to ongoing negotiations. They're saying there are no negotiations, you're just stonewalling.
No, that's not the case. We actually met with them yesterday. We met with them last week after they took industrial action. There are a number of claims on the table which we've been discussing since May. That is simply not the case. We have a negotiating team which is very much open to these discussions. There are a number of items on the table which we've been working through. One of the claims that the transport unions has on the table is a 15% pay increase over 3 years. This obviously is not acceptable, and it is not simply not sustainable for Qantas in these economic climates. We're very much committed to these negotiations. We've recently done a deal with the ASU, which is a union which represents a significant number of employees in our company. We're committed to these negotiations with all three unions, and this sort of strike action, though, indicates that perhaps that's not the same for them.
So you said 15% rise over 3 years. Have you made a counter-offer? What was it?
We haven't yet made a counter-offer. As you would be aware, there are a number of claims on the table which we're currently working through. There are a number of claims on the table which don't relate to wages. It's things like trying to mandate certain practices which would no longer be available to Qantas, such as contract workforce.
But if you haven't made a counter-offer, then how can we expect the strikes to end? How can we expect that there would have been progress? I assume this is what the union means when it says that you haven't replied or haven't responded to the claims that they're trying to make.
Well, this is not how the negotiations work. We've been in negotiations with the TWU since May. That's close to 6 months. There are a number of claims on the table which you have to work through in this sort of negotiation. I understand there's close to 36 claims on the table which we have to work through. That happened yesterday. It will happen again next week. We're very much committed to these negotiations. It's simply not a case of counter-offer over offer. It's not how it works. These negotiations are ongoing. They will be ongoing. Qantas is very much committed to them. We've spoken to the head of the union. We continue to have negotiations with the negotiating team as well.
You've referred earlier to them making claims that would require you really to adopt outmoded or outdated work conditions and practices. Can you elaborate on what that might mean? Does that mean, what are modern work conditions and practices? Does it mean jobs going overseas and pay being lowered?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, that's absolutely a ridiculous claim. Baggage handlers, obviously, you can't outsource that sort of work. You can't offshore it. You need to be right here in Australia. What we are talking about is having flexible work agreements in place. We've been working with the Transport Workers Union on this. We signed a deal with them close to 3 years ago on provision to have flexibility in the workforce, which will allow us to have contract workers and part-time workers in our workplace, which we need. And we need that because we've got a lot of competitors out there, and we need to remain competitive. Qantas pays our baggage handlers, for example, 12% more than Virgin counterpart. We are a very good employer. We're committed to those negotiations and continue that case. But we do need to have flexibility in the workplace. At this stage, we have around 10% of the baggage handlers, which is in contract work. We need to have that flexibility into the future, and the reason why we need that flexibility is because it's very, very competitive.
Just finally, there's a related issue in Fiji now with reports that a company that Qantas part owns, called Air Pacific, have paid the cost of drafting a law that bans unionism in some quarters. What should we make of that? Does this tell us anything about Qantas's philosophy at the moment?
Oh, it absolutely does not. Qantas has been a shareholder of Air Pacific for a number of years. We do have a minority shareholding in that company. That has been in place, as I said, for well over a decade, and we have nothing to do, however, with the management of that company. We do have a shareholding, and we do not fly aircraft into and out of Fiji. We do have a code-share arrangement. However, we do not deal with the day-to-day management of that organisation.
Olivia Wirth, good to talk to you.
Thanks, Walid.